Hi, I'm Rob Aldrich with DevFactory, and today I'm going to show you how simple it is to leverage DevSpaces to develop with a Python, Django, and MySQL stack. DevSpaces is the platform that makes it easy for every organization to adopt Docker. By dockerizing your development environment and then performing code changes and testing inside the Docker container, promoting that container to testing and production environments is a simple next step. To create a DevSpace, we need both a Docker file that describes how to build the Docker image and a DevSpaces YAML file that describes our DevSpace and indicates the ports to expose and what environment variables to pass in. In the next few minutes, I'll show you how to create a DevSpace, set it up to sync with my local directory, start my application within the DevSpace, and make some small code changes to demonstrate what it's like to develop and test in DevSpaces. Finally, when you're ready to try DevSpaces out for free, click the link below and sign up for our free Dockerization service. We'll Dockerize your development environment for you. Let's start our demo. First, let's look at our project. You can use whatever IDE you'd like, as DevSpaces works directly with your local file system and doesn't need to be integrated with your development environment. The next step is to create the DevSpace. A DevSpace can be set up from a downloadable public Docker image or from a set of custom Docker files. If you don't have a lot of experience with Docker, it isn't a problem. DevFactory provides free Dockerization services for DevSpaces customers to get you going. We can see that our project already has Docker and configuration files created. This is all we need to get our DevSpace up and running. The DevSpaces YAML file is the configuration file of our DevSpace. And you can see ours is going to be called Django, and that our application is exposing port 8000 for use with the web server. There are just a few steps to creating a DevSpace. First, we'll navigate to the folder containing this configuration file. Then, simply run the DevSpaces create command. This will create our DevSpace, containing everything needed to build and run our project, including the Python, Django, and MySQL stack. This will take a few minutes. Afterward, your DevSpace will be ready to use. While the DevSpace is building, you can check the progress by running the DevSpaces ls command. As it's being set up, the DevSpace status will go through multiple states. When finished, it will change to stopped. Now that our DevSpace is set up, we need to start it. If it's the first time running this DevSpace, we'll also need to bind the code directory. When we bind our code directory, DevSpaces keeps everything on our local workstation synchronized with our DevSpace in the cloud, so that we can see changes there in real time. Back at the command prompt, we simply type DevSpaces start and the name of our DevSpace. So far, we provided a Docker file. Within our configuration, we referenced this file, named our DevSpace, and exposed port 8000 for use with our application. DevSpaces will now build our container, start it up, and generate URLs to map this port. All of the configuration to start a complete development environment is now versioned, and the rest of our source code can easily be launched by anyone on our team. Let's get back to our demo. Once the status of your DevSpace is running, we're ready to bind. At the command prompt, we need to navigate to the root code directory. Once there, we simply type DevSpaces bind and the name of our DevSpace. At this point, our codebase will begin syncing with our DevSpace. Depending on the size of your repository, this could take a few minutes. But after this first time, only changes are sent. Things are kept synchronized in real time. Now that we're all set up, we can connect to the DevSpace and start our web server. To connect, all we need to do is type DevSpaces exec and the name of our DevSpace. You'll notice that the command prompt changes. You're now running commands within your DevSpace in the cloud. A special directory named Data has been set up. If you navigate to this directory, you can see that all of your code has been synchronized. Any changes you make to your local codebase will be reflected here while your DevSpace is running. To demonstrate this, let's start our web server in the cloud and run our project. In our example, we can start the web server by running the startup script start.sh. Now, the web server is running in the cloud. DevSpaces has mapped the Expose port 8000 to its HTTP services and provides a link. You can find this by running DevSpaces info and then the name of the DevSpace from the command line. If we use this URL to access our application, we can see it's running within our DevSpace. Now, let's head back to our development environment. We'll navigate to App, Polls, and then open the Views Python file. Here, we'll make a quick change and save it locally. When we go back to our DevSpaces site and refresh, we see that our local changes have been automatically synced and reflected there. Next, we can log into the app using the admin account. The password in our example is password. We have a fully functional site, and any changes made here will be saved in the MySQL database that's running within our DevSpace. No development environment integration is required. Once you've bound your DevSpace and it's running, the lightweight DevSpaces client works in the background to automatically keep your local code synchronized with your DevSpace. Likewise, anything added to the data folder in your DevSpace flows back through the client and is reflected in your local project. Now that we're running our environment on the fastest machines in the cloud, we spend less time waiting and have shorter development iterations. It's simple and fast. So in less than 5 minutes, we were able to set up the infrastructure, run, and test a complete Python Django web application with a MySQL database from scratch. Thanks for your time. If you found this video useful, please click like below and check out our other videos.